Good evening, I'm Diane in Hong Kong and welcome to ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show. Government paints rosy picture of private housing supply, saying it expects record high number of new flats within the next few years. The U.S. Senate deals President Donald Trump a stinging blow as Republicans cross party lines to vote down repeal bill meant to gut Obamacare. And Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif resigns after court rules him unfit for office over Panama Papers revelations. All right, good evening. There will be more new private homes up for grabs in Hong Kong within the next 3 to 4 years than ever before. That's according to the latest data from the Transport and Housing Bureau. The city's supply of new private homes will reach 98,000 by at least 2021, a record high. Among the units, 29,000 will be developed on land sold by the government. Developers are building 61,000 units and 8,000 flats are still unsold. But analysts remain cautious over the government's rosy picture of the housing market. Vincent Zheng, Deputy Managing Director at Colliers International, says demand will continue to outweigh supply.
The government estimation is based on the assumption that all the development projects will be completed over the next 3 to 4 years, although the number of under-construction flats has jumped a lot, and that may sound like a big figure, the number of flats actually available for sales hasn't changed much at all.
Well, the Urban Renewal Authority has kicked off a redevelopment project in Sai Ying Pun. One, it says, will cost $1.3 billion and provide 165 residential units in 10 years' time. The plan covers around 10 rundown buildings along Sung Hing Lane and Kwai Hung Street, ranging from around 40 to almost 60 years old. Officers were seen carrying out a household count there this morning. The buildings are said to be housing around 110 families and 13 shops currently. The authority says the project will improve living conditions for residents there and optimize the use of public space in the area. The Legislative Council waved goodbye to the 4 unseated lawmakers today as they moved out of their office in Tamar Building. Flanked by other pro-democracy legislators, Demosistos Nathan Law, LSD's Leung Kwok Hung, Independent Edward Yu and Democracy Groundwork's Lau Siu Lai left the LegCo complex this afternoon. They were seen earlier returning the vacated rooms to the LegCo Secretariat. The High Court ruled 2 weeks ago that their swearing-in oaths had failed to meet requirements set out by the Basic Law after Beijing issued an interpretation of the law late last year.
We are walking out of LegCo with our heads high and a clear conscience. We don't regret the oaths we took that day. Everything we have done is for the people.
Now, we've received reports that a mainland driver for cable TV news was detained in Jiangmen City on Wednesday. That's after he took a reporter to a memorial event for late Nobel Peace Laureate Liu Xiaobo. Cable TV says it has offered the driver legal support, and we will bring you more as this story unfolds. Now, let's take a look at other local news. A motorcyclist was killed in a 3-vehicle collision in Tates Khan Tunnel this morning. The crash happened at about 9 a.m. involving a motorcycle, a taxi and a car. The motorcyclist was trapped under the car and had to be rescued by firemen. He was taken to the hospital where he was later pronounced dead. Police shut off one of the lanes of the Shatin-bound tunnel for a short while following the accident. Now, earlier this evening, passengers taking MTR trains on 3 lines suffered delays for more than an hour due to a power failure. Service later resumed to normal at around 6:30 in the evening. Scores of passengers were stranded on MTR platforms as trains had to run on longer intervals and slower speeds just as peak rush hour kicked in. The glitch affected services on the Island Line, Chun Wan Line and Kwun Tong Line. Shops and ATM machines inside MTR stations were also hit, and many shopkeepers had to clear out their fridges and shut their doors for the day. All right, turning to the U.S. now. In a stinging blow to President Donald Trump, Senate Republicans failed to dismantle so-called Obamacare, possibly ending a 7-year quest by their party to gut the healthcare law.
The ayes are 49, the nays are 51. The motion is not agreed to.
Voting in the early hours of the morning, 3 Republican senators crossed party lines to join Democrats in a dramatic 49-51 vote, shooting down a skinny repeal bill that would have killed some parts of Obamacare. Outside Capitol Hill, protesters rallying overnight against the bill greeted the news with much excitement. But with not a single major legislative win in Trump's first 6 months in office, Republicans are left with a major struggle to fulfill party promises.
For 7 years, Republicans have been promising the American people that we would repeal Obamacare. That has been the fundamental commitment of Republicans in the House, Republicans in the Senate, and the President. We have to honor that commitment. And I believe we will.
To more disarray in Washington, D.C., open warfare has erupted in President Trump's inner circle as his new communications director, Anthony Scaramucci, launched an all-out attack on senior White House colleagues. In a phone conversation laced with profanity with a New Yorker reporter, Scaramucci called White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus a, quote, paranoid schizophrenic. The former Wall Street financier also accused Trump's chief strategist, Steve Bannon, of trying to build his own brand, quote, off the expletive strength of the president. After the magazine published the article online, Scaramucci said on Twitter, "I sometimes use colorful language. I will refrain in this arena, but will not give up the passionate fight for Donald Trump's agenda," ending with the hashtag Make America Great Again. Staying in D.C., despite opposition from U.S. President Trump, the Senate voted almost unanimously in favor of slapping new sanctions on Russia. The Senate backed the bill, which also imposes sanctions on Iran and North Korea by a margin of 98-2, with strong support from Trump's fellow Republicans as well as Democrats. The outcome gives Trump two options: veto the legislation and face backlash in Washington, or take a tougher stance on the Kremlin. In a sharp response to the sanctions, Russia's foreign ministry has asked the U.S. to cut its diplomatic staff in the country to 455 people. It also said Russia would seize some U.S. diplomatic property in retaliation. To Pakistan now, where Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has resigned from his post after a top court disqualified him from office. This follows months of a damning corruption probe that found his family's wealth to be way above their actual earnings. As Ryan Brooks reports, his decision has raised concerns about the country's democratic development.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif dramatically stepping down from office on Friday, his third stint in power cut short by a damning corruption probe that began with the infamous Panama Papers. His resignation comes after Supreme Court judges ruled to disqualify Sharif because he and his family couldn't account for their vast wealth, which according to an investigative panel far exceeds their earnings. Reuters correspondent Drazen Yorjik is in Islamabad.
People in Pakistan are stunned after today's announcement. The Supreme Court not only toppled the country's prime minister, but also the finance minister, who was one of the most important cabinet members and a close ally to Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. The opposition ministers and opposition politicians are rejoicing. They're saying it's a triumph of accountability in a country where impunity has been rife for decades. However, the supporters of Sharif say the Prime Minister actually hasn't been convicted of anything, and the Supreme Court is overstepping its mark by disqualifying him.
The decision raises concerns about the future of Pakistan's fragile democracy. Since independence from British rule 70 years ago, not one prime minister has served a full term of office. The onus is now on the ruling party to choose a new national leader.
And to Japan, where Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's cabinet has suffered another blow. This time, Defense Minister Tomomi Inada said she's resigning after a series of missteps in her ministry. The beleaguered official is allegedly involved in a cover-up of sensitive documents about a controversial peacekeeping deployment in South Sudan. Inada was once touted as a possible successor of Abe, whose popularity has continued to plunge. Abe has apologized to nationals on TV for the step down, adding that Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida will take over her duties. Meanwhile, Kishida announced that Japan would impose additional sanctions on Pyongyang in the form of asset freezing for its weapons programs. This comes shortly after the U.S. Senate voted for further restrictions on the reclusive state as well. All right, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. All right, we'll start with a look at the markets here in Hong Kong. The Hang Seng Index of leading shares finished the week down 0.56% on 26,979 points. Tech, energy and financial companies are all dragging the index down. Profit-taking underpinning a correction, but we still finish the day with a third straight week of gains. Right, Chinese coffee lovers rejoice. Starbucks says it's making a long-term investment in the country. The chief executive has announced a renewed interest in the Far East as the company plans to purchase the rest of its China business from its joint venture partners. But while consumers here might be smiling, in Starbucks' home market of the US, interest looks to be sagging. Sam Vadas has more.
As growth in the US shows signs of cooling, Starbucks is setting its sights on China. The world's biggest coffee chain on Thursday announcing it's buying out its partners in the country for $1.3 billion, its biggest acquisition ever. The cash deal will see Starbucks snap up the remaining 50% stake of its East China business, giving it full ownership of around 1,300 stores in Shanghai, as well as Jiangsu and Zhejiang provinces. It's an opportunity the company's new boss, Kevin Johnson, says is unparalleled, adding that the company's just getting started. Starbucks is going all in on the fast-growing Chinese market as it tries to find new ways to deliver on Wall Street's demands. The urgency of the move underlined on Thursday as the company posted